We start off with Europe, where the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development has lowered its economic growth forecast for Germany, despite projecting global economic growth of 3.3% next year. In a recently published report, the OECD stated that Germany's GDP is expected to grow by only 0.7% in 2025, following stagnant growth this year. Growth is anticipated to recover in 2026, with the German economy forecasted to expand by 1.2%. The revised projections highlight the challenges facing Germany's economy, coming less than 3 months after the OECD had predicted a 1% growth rate for 2025. The British Prime Minister Keir Starmer has stated that his government's progress in boosting the economy should be judged by using data on household disposable income and GDP per capita over the 5-year Parliament. A document setting out Starmer's plans revealed that the government would aim for the fastest economic growth per capita in the group of 7 advanced economies, which represents a dilution of what was previously a pledge. It also promised to deliver higher living standards across every region of the UK by the end of the parliamentary term.
And even the projects we do approve are fought tooth and nail and tooth until you end up with the absurd spectacle of a £100 million bat tunnel holding up the country's single biggest infrastructure project, driving up taxes and the cost of living beyond belief. And I tell you now, this government will not accept this nonsense anymore.
A spokesperson for the EU executive said the economic impact of political turmoil in France on the broader European economy appears limited, although the European Commission is closely monitoring the situation. Investor demand for a risk premium to hold French debt instead of German bonds declined following the anticipated collapse of the French government. This week, far-right and left-wing lawmakers united to support a no-confidence motion against Prime Minister Michel Barnier. Analysts warned that France could face a prolonged economic downturn, potentially leading to a downgrade in sovereign creditworthiness and reduced economic growth. Italian state lender CDP and the African Development Bank have entered into a co-financing agreement worth €400 million to support climate finance, sustainable agriculture, education and technical assistance. The agreement, which was finalized during the AFDB's Africa Investment Forum in Rabat, is part of Italy's €6 billion Mattei plan aimed at boosting development in Africa. According to AFDB's Vice President for Finance, the goal is to mobilize capital across the continent by leveraging African funds and accelerating equity, as explained by the head of CDP's International Cooperation and Development Finance Directorate. Denmark has revised its economic growth outlook upwards, citing the expansion of the pharmaceutical industry, particularly the success of weight loss drug maker Novo Nordisk. The Danish Economy Ministry announced that GDP for 2024 is now projected to grow by 3%, up from an earlier forecast of 1.9%, while the projection for 2025 has been increased to 2.9% from 2.2%. The ministry highlighted that the growth is primarily driven by the production and exports within the pharmaceutical sector. Looking further ahead, the ministry expects GDP growth to slow to 1.7% by 2026. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen arrived in Uruguay to finalize a long-awaited trade deal between the EU and the Mercosur bloc, which includes Brazil, Argentina, Paraguay, Uruguay and Bolivia. The agreement, 20 years in the making, would create a transatlantic market of around 700 million people. Von der Leyen emphasized that the finish line was in sight, urging for continued efforts to secure what would become one of the largest global trade partnerships.